Hello and welcome to the famous Matches of Magic channel. Today we have a treat for you. We will be presenting the 2018 Vintage Magic Championship. Today's matchup is between Nam Tram piloting Shops and Brian Coval playing Paradoxical Control. Before we get down to the action, let's review the deck list so that you can better understand the matchup. Nam Tram's Shops deck is extremely similar to the one that won Vintage Champs in 2017, although Thorn of Amethyst is now restricted. The combination of Arc-Bound Ravager, Steel Overseer, and Walking Ballista is extremely powerful. It wants to lock down with a Sphere of Resistance or Trinisphere or Thorn of Amethyst with the power of Mishra's Workshop. And it has Null Rods in the sideboard, which is extremely powerful against Paradoxical Outcome. This is a pretty standard deck list. Now let's review the Paradoxical Control deck. This deck is extremely fast as it has every fast mana artifact with all of the Moxes, 4 Mox Opals, Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal. It can kill turn 1 pretty often, and then it wants to cast a Paradoxical Outcome, return all of its artifacts to its hands, draw a bunch of cards, and then kill with a Tendrils of Agony. It is very susceptible to a Null Rod, however, and it doesn't have that much permission other than Force of Will. This deck is extremely powerful. It can lose to 1 Sphere of Resistance as it is very hard to get around, but it does have Hurkyl's Recalls in the main deck. Now that you know the deck list, let's head down to the action and find out who is the 2018 Vintage Magic Champion. We are on game 1 and Brian Coval is on the play against Shops, which is huge, and he starts out with a bang with a turn 1 Ancestral Recall and just a Mox Opal. Wow, that is great to start with 3 extra cards. Let's see, what can Nam Tram start with? He has one of his best starts with a Mishra's Workshop and a special Sphere of Resistance, a masterpiece Sphere of Resistance from Kaladesh. And that is met with a Force of Will, removing a Hurkyl's Recall. Brian Coval then starts with another piece of power and a Time Walk on turn 2, and it is just cycling that for an extra land drop. He drops a Library of Alexandria and then casts a Demonic Tutor. Let's see, he searches up another piece of power, a Black Lotus. This is not looking good for Nam Tram. He sacrifices that Black Lotus to cast a Yawgmoth's Will. Yawgmoth's Will allows him to get the Black Lotus back out of his yard where he has that Ancestral Recall and the Time Walk waiting. This is again not looking good. It looks like we may have a turn 2 kill from the Paradoxical deck. He is able to cast Gataxi Improv from free, and he's going to see Nam Tram is all shields down. Let's just sit here and enjoy the music until Nam Tram decides to concede. Alright, we are on to game 2 where Shops will be on the play, and that'll give it a huge advantage. So Nam Tram does mulligan and he scries to the bottom where he has a turn 1 Black Lotus and Lodestone Golem. Lodestone Golem is a piece of disruption and a powerhouse with 5 power, so this is looking very strong for Nam Tram. Brian Coval just has a turn 1 mana crypt. Nam Tram plays a Mishra's Factory, gets in for 5 points of damage. What can he follow up with? It looks like a Null Rod. Null Rod is extremely strong against Brian Coval, as he has so many artifacts that produce mana, and it is pretty much impossible for Brian Coval to get off his combo with that in play. He goes taps for 2 mana to cast a Preordain, and he goes bottom, which is exactly what you want to see from your opponent when they cast a Preordain, and that's all he can muster up. And he passes the turn back to Nam Tram, who untaps, and he goes for the Wasteland on the library, plays another Mishra's Factory, plays a Phyrexian Revoker, and is going to get in for 5 more points of damage, bring Brian Coval all the way down to 10. Lodestone Golem is such a beater. Man, that's already 9 points on the board, so he can almost deal lethal damage to Brian Coval next turn. What can Brian do here? He really needs to get a Harkle's Recall going, but he does not have enough for that. All he can do is cast a Sensei's Divining Top. So let's see, he activates a Mishra's Workshop and gets in for 9, which puts Brian Coval all the way down to 1 damage, and that is enough. He scoops him up. We are tied 1-1 on to game 3, 1 game to decide the 2018 Vintage Champion. Paradoxical Control will be on the play here, so once again he's going to be a huge favorite against shops. And damn, what a strong start. Let's take a look at this real quick. So he has a Mox Opal, a Mox Ruby, a Mana Crypt, and a Demonic Tutor before the shop's player can cast a single spell. What does he tutor up here? He casts a Sensei's Divining Top, activates it, and what else can he do here? Is he going to play what he searches up, or is he going to pass the turn back to Nam Tram? He just looks at the top 3 and is doing nothing else, and is going to pass the turn to the shop's player. And he better have a strong turn 1, because it is very possible he is not going to get another turn. So he just casts a Mishra's Factory, a Mox, a Soul Ring, a Mana Crypt. So he has a pretty good start here. And a Chalice of the Void and a Sphere of Resistance, all resolving. So hey, we got a game here. Nam Tram is just crossing his fingers and hoping he gets another turn in the Vintage Championship. What can Brian Coval do here? He rolls for the Mana Crypt, and then he just passes the turn. So Nam Tram is like, wow, I guess I'm still in this game. He did take 3 off of it for Brian Coval. He missed for his Mana Crypt, but Nam Tram did not miss on his, so he plays a Mishra's Workshop. And he has a Walking Ballista in his hand, so is that what he's going to go for? Is he going to go for a 3/3 Walking Ballista? And Brian Coval does have a Harkle's Recall in his hand, so if he just taps out for that Walking Ballista, that could be exactly what Brian Coval wants. So looks like that's what he's going to do, and then Brian Coval is going to go for an end of turn Harkle's Recall. This is exactly what Brian Coval wants, and Nam Tram is walking right into that. There we are, end of turn Harkle's Recall. Nam Tram is counting his permanents to see if he is going to have to discard due to hand size with everything going back into his hand. He just has one permanent in play, that Mishra's Workshop. Brian Coval is going to untap, and he is going to cast that Paradoxical Outcome that he searched up with his demonic tutor. He is going to tap everything, and with the Sensei's Divining top trigger on the staff, return it to his hand, so he draws an extra card off of it. So Paradoxical Outcome is going to give him 5 cards rather than 4. Storm count is growing quickly, and Nam Tram sees the writing on the wall. He is gaining extra mana, drawing extra cards, gaining extra storm. If Tendrils of Agony is coming down, then we will have a vintage champion named Brian Coval with this powerful Paradoxical Outcome. Nam Tram will have only had a few turns in the 2 games that he has lost. That is a second Paradoxical Outcome this turn. And more cards going into his hand, more cards being drawn, more storm. Nam Tram is just thinking in his head, wow, I was so close to being vintage champion, and it is over. There's the Tolarian Academy. There is the Tendrils. There is the handshake. And I just want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching the Famous Matches of Magic channel. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.
I can't believe it! You could have killed me!